Are you an educator wanting to create engaging learning experiences? In our last video, we talked about what learning design is, so hit the card above if you haven't seen it yet. This video will give 5 top tips to get you started with learning design and creating those engaging learning experiences. Okay, so tip number 1 is to start with your learning outcomes. It may not be the most fun part, but you need to have clear, measurable, achievable learning outcomes. And that means not using verbs such as understand that can be very difficult to measure. Bloom's taxonomy of learning verbs can be a big help in developing these outcomes. Tip number 2 is assessment. So once you have those well-written learning outcomes, you need to align them to some form of assessment. So think about how will your students show that the outcome has been achieved. So now we've got these goalposts of learning outcomes linked to forms of assessment. Now for the content of the session. And I think the best advice I can offer here is tip 3, chunk. Chunk your session content into small pieces of digestible information. It sounds simple, but it's very effective. Tip 4 is then to consider the sequencing of these chunks or learning objects. How will you deliver them to create the optimal flow or momentum of the session? Which objects will be synchronously or live delivered? Which are best delivered asynchronously or online? This flow can help keep learners engaged rather than having one long monologue, and the flow can also be informed by different instructional strategies, and we'll explore some of these in the future. So for example, if I want to introduce a new concept to my learners that relates to one of my learning outcomes, I might create a small chunk, like a bite-sized video of me talking about the concept that they can watch and rewatch at their convenience until they have a grasp of the content. A second chunk then, or a learning object is the more appropriate term, could be a series of multiple choice questions based on the content of the video. This will allow me to assess understanding of the topic. So finally, tip 5 would be to try and always make one of your learning objects learner-driven. By giving the opportunity and autonomy to your learner to do, to research, to create, to present is one of the most powerful approaches we can use and helps achieve higher order thinking. It also takes the emphasis off you to deliver all of the content, moving from a more teacher-led to a more learner-centered approach. Okay, so to summarize, if we view our sessions as a series of learning objects that combine to fulfill our learning outcomes, it gives us much more flexibility and helps us to create much more engaging learning experiences. I'll finish this chunk of information by urging you to give it a go. Start small and iterate. What's one chunk that you could implement in the coming weeks? A discussion, a video, a quiz. You can introduce learning design to your sessions one chunk at a time. So good luck, and if you got value from this video, please hit like and consider subscribing to the channel.